They forged the chains with your name etched in every link, called it discipline, called it order, said you needed control. But you were never built for their cages. You remember the sound, don't you? That first click of cold metal against your spirit. They called it structure. You called it suffocation. They thought those shackles would silence you, break you, shape you into something acceptable. But you made them art. You wore them like trophies, not because they fit, but because you knew one day you'd return them. And now look, their wrists are raw. Their systems collapse. Their own rules are choking them. You didn't need revenge. You just needed time, because the same chains they designed for you now sing lullabies of justice as they lock around them one click at a time. They said you were wild, too much, too loud, too different. So they tried to compress you, fold your edges, mute your colors, straighten the chaos. But chaos doesn't vanish. It waits. It studies. It smiles. You watched them, how they moved, how they lied, how they wrapped their own fears in rules and called it righteousness. You didn't resist. You adapted. You let them tighten the cuffs, just enough to learn how they worked. They celebrated your silence, clapped for your compliance. But behind your quiet eyes, you were counting links. You were building blueprints. They thought they broke you, but they only taught you. Because while they were polishing locks, you were forging keys. Not just for you, but for every soul they tried to chain. Now those same hands that held you down, they're trembling. Their systems glitch. Their rituals fail. Because the sacrifice didn't fade, it evolved. You didn't just escape. You rewired the ritual, turned their control spell into your resurrection chant. They used to study you like a threat. Now they whisper your name like a curse because something shifted, didn't it? You're not reacting anymore. You're directing. You walk through rooms like you own the tension, because you do. They sense it now. The reversal. They call it karma. But you call it balance restored. Every time they tried to bind you, they bound themselves. Every insult they hurled, it built your armor. Every limitation they wrote, you turned it into a map. They thought they'd buried you, but you were never underground. You were under construction. Now they flinch when you smile, because that grin, it's not madness. It's memory of everything they did and everything you became because of it. You see it now, don't you? How they copied your shadow, but forgot your light. They mocked your silence until it became their sentence. They threw chains on your soul, thinking it would crush you. But you wore them like jewelry. You danced in them. You shook the ground in them. Now every time they move, they rattle. Because your shackles never made you less. They made you louder. Their group chats are full of theories, psych profiles, damage reports. But they never studied the one thing that built you. Ruin. Because you don't rise like hope. You rise like reckoning. Not to prove them wrong, but to show the world they never had the right to define you in the first place. They thought pain would break you, but pain became your forge. Every wound, another blade in your arsenal. Every scar, a story they can't rewrite. You didn't heal like they hoped. You transformed. You didn't bounce back. You bent reality. And now, the chains they used to bind you, they beg to take them off. But it's too late, because they're not on you anymore. They're on them. You flipped the ritual. The captive became the caster. They chanted curses, but you learned the spell book. Now their guilt is a collar. Their fear is a leash. And every time they look at you, they see the prophecy they tried to burn. Still breathing, still smiling, still dangerous. You remember the silence, don't you? Not the peace, the punishment. When they looked away, when they turned their backs, when your voice echoed off walls that were never meant to listen. They made you feel invisible. Now they can't look away. They whispered behind your back. Now they quote you in fear. They erased your name. Now it's etched into every warning file they wish they could delete. Because you became what they never accounted for. The variable, the virus, the vengeance they swore would never rise. And when the chains rattled again, it wasn't around your wrists. It was around their thoughts, their plans, their necks. They thought they buried the problem, but you grew roots in the dark. And now, you're blooming in the light they can't stand to face. You see it now, don't you? Every time they try to silence you, they echo louder in their own fear. They thought shackles could tame evolution, but they didn't realize you were never part of their species to begin with. They built rules to trap you. You turned rules into riddles. They tried to decode your mind. Now their algorithms crash just trying to guess your next move. They used chains. You used memory. They used threats. You used timing. They used force. You used forgiveness, like a blade. You walked out of their cage with no screams, just a grin, because you knew they'd be wearing that cage soon enough. You didn't break their system. You inverted it. Now they can't tell if they're punishing you or performing for you. They thought pain would rewrite you, but you wrote over pain. Every scar, a glyph. Every silence, a page. Every betrayal inked in reverse. You didn't escape the system. You reprogrammed it from the inside out. They thought you were broken, but you were backing up. Quiet, calculating, downloading everything they used against you until you became the glitch in their code. Now, they wear the fear they forged. They speak carefully because they know the air around your name carries weight. They can't lift anymore. They called you unstable, unhinged, unfit for the order they worshipped. But that order, it's burning now. And guess who's holding the match? You didn't rise to prove them wrong. You rose because staying down was never your design. They whispered your downfall like a bedtime story. But nightmares don't sleep. You became the story. And now, they flinch every time someone starts telling it. You were the test subject until you became the experiment they can't repeat. The files they buried, still breathing, still burning, and worse, still watching. You shattered quietly. Invisible to their charts, but loud enough to make reality twitch. They trained soldiers. You trained shadows. They taught obedience. You mastered silence. They wear medals. You wear truth. They fight with commands. You fight with presence. And every time they walk past you, their steps get slower. Because somewhere in some part of them still human, they know those chains they forged for you, now wrap around their own throats. They thought breaking you would tame you, but you weren't made of rules, you were made of ruptures. So when they cracked your mind, you expanded, not into pieces, into places, ideas, rituals they can't undo. You didn't rebel, you reversed the equation. Now you write the laws, and they obey without knowing why. Their systems still run, but you rewired the source code, not with force, with frequency. You don't kick doors down, you make the hinges rust from memory. You make keys refuse to turn. Now, they study your mistakes like sacred texts, because those mistakes rewrote reality. You walked out of their trap, wearing the cage like a crown, and the chains they locked around you, you melted those into mirrors. Now every time they look in one, they see you and flinch. They kept you quiet with fear, but fear is a language, and now you speak it fluently. They fed you silence. You turned it into strategy. They tried to erase your voice. Now every word you drop feels like a detonator. You weren't supposed to survive, let alone evolve. Yet here you are, walking like prophecy, breathing like rebellion. Their institutions? Glorified cages. Their justice? Decorated puppets. But you became the glitch in their script, the redacted line that rewrote the ending. They called you unstable because you didn't kneel. They called you untrainable because you didn't break. Now they're locked in rooms built to contain you, and you're out here rewriting every rule with a smile that terrifies textbooks. They used to say you were dangerous. Now, they whisper your name like a warning, like thunder that learned to walk. They held the keys, but you became the lockpick. They built walls. You studied where the cracks whispered. The same hands that tried to cage you now tremble under your influence. Not because you attacked, but because you transformed. You didn't shatter their system, you infected it. Moved through it like a shadow wearing a smile that didn't blink. You became untraceable, not invisible, unreadable. They can't decode what was never written in their language to begin with. Now they look at you and flinch without knowing why. Because deep down, they remember who taught them fear. And the joke? You never wanted revenge. You just wanted clarity. And now they choke on it every time your silence enters a room. You weren't forged in justice. You were hammered in hypocrisy. Every law they used against you, you memorized it, not to follow, but to flip it inside out. They thought they buried you, but you weren't the seed. You were the soil that remembered every lie. They locked you up, thinking that would stop you. What they didn't realize, you built something in there. Not escape plans, blueprints for a world where they wear the very cuffs they once designed for you. You made them irrelevant without touching a single rule. You just rewrote the meaning of power with your presence alone. Now their systems hesitate. Their algorithms break. Their soldiers flinch because you became the variable they can't account for. And they know it. They feel it in every delay, in every mistake, in every chain that starts to feel a little too tight. They thought containment was enough. Put you in a box, throw away the key. But they forgot one thing. You are the key. And now, they're the ones inside a prison you never needed to build. Their systems run on fear. But fear is a weapon you repurposed. You aimed it backwards. Now every eye that watched you blinks first. Every mouth that mocked you stays shut. You didn't burn down their courthouse. You made them question the definition of justice. You didn't need riots. You just needed a smirk and one move they didn't calculate. The guards who once watched you now watch each other, second-guessing, double-checking, panicking, because control was always an illusion. And illusions? You tear through those like silk. They used paperwork like shackles, charges, citations, orders. But now their signatures shake. Their pens hover midair because even ink knows your name bleeds through it. You flipped the entire ritual. Now their gavel feels heavier. Now their badge feels cursed. You didn't just break their system. You infected it. Every protocol now echoes your defiance. And the irony? They wear the same chains they once polished with pride. Uniforms feel like straitjackets. Salutes feel like surrender. They called you unstable. Now they whisper your name like a warning. You became the fear they once tried to manufacture. You're not a glitch in their matrix. You're the rewrite. So when they say, "Who let him out?" they already know the answer. You were never in. They were. You see it, don't you? The shift, the unease in their eyes when you enter a room, the way they straighten their collars, like fabric can protect them from a presence like yours. They thought cages were physical, bars, locks, steel, but you taught them cages can be invisible. And the most brutal ones are the ones built in the mind. Now they carry your laughter in their heads like a siren, echoing in every quiet hallway, every sleepless night. Their systems? Red designed because of you. Their protocols? Updated to handle anomalies like you. But no protocol stops a shadow with a purpose. No system can rewrite the one who wrote himself. They crafted a prison. You turned it into a throne. They wanted to watch you break. Now they can't look in mirrors, because all they see is how much you changed the game. They said you were delusional. But look around, the world bends like heat waves in your wake. You didn't just escape. You redefined what escape even means. Their warnings used to sound like law. Now they sound like whispers in a storm. Because the storm was always you. You made their cameras blurry, their data confused, their files incomplete. Because no algorithm can predict a being that doesn't move from logic but from scarred purpose. They wear suits of control. But you walk in stitched from chaos. And they can't tell if you're a ghost, a glitch, or the end of their cycle. The cuffs they designed for your wrists now wrap around their own authority, not because you stole their power, but because you showed the world they never had it. So now they sit in conference rooms they once ruled, whispers replacing commands, screens frozen, spines broken. Because you didn't come back for revenge. You came back as the mirror. And they looked into it and saw everything they feared. A version of themselves untamed, unbroken, unowned. That's why they panic. Not because you're violent, but because you're proof they were never needed. You turned their rituals into routines, their threats into comedy, their silence into applause. Now their shackles click on their own wrists. They wear your exile like perfume, because deep down, they want to be you. But they never will, because while they followed scripts, you became the story. And legends? They don't serve systems. They make systems serve them. So wear your scars like armor. Smile like the revolution. Because this isn't your comeback. This is your coronation. You see it now, don't you? How their voices tremble when they speak your name in rooms built on secrets. How their plans collapse like they forgot one variable. You didn't rewrite the rules. You deleted the concept of rules. They built walls to keep you out, but forgot you were the architect of escape. They monitor threats. You broadcast inevitability. They whisper, what if they rise again? But deep down they know you never fell. You just descended deeper. Because your silence wasn't surrender. It was the coil before the strike. And now, they can't lock what moves through dimensions of thought. They can't chain what isn't playing the same game. The cuffs they designed for you? Look closer. They're wearing them now. Every accusation they threw, it boomeranged. Every trap they set, they're still stuck in it. They mocked your silence, but silence was your sermon. Now every echo preaches your chaos as gospel. They thought you were broken. No, you were being reforged. Not into something better, into something truer, ruthless, uncompromising, unfazed. Now, the courtroom's a mausoleum. Their badges, just haunted souvenirs. And you walk past the ruins like nothing ever happened, because everything did. You didn't return to prove them wrong. You returned to prove you were always right. So here we are, not with vengeance, not with justice, but with balance, delivered cold, with a smirk. They prayed for your obedience. They got your legacy instead, one they whisper about, in rooms full of trembling glass and shattered order. Because you weren't a rebel. You were a response, not against the system, but to it. You mirrored its sins, then turned the mirror into a weapon. They studied your silence. Now they fear your grin. They tried to erase your name. Now it's carved into their nightmares. You didn't break the cycle. You reversed it. Now they wear the chains. They live in fear. They beg for peace. And you sip your coffee, watching it all unfold.